We're live.
A very good evening, respected principal ma'am, teachers, and everyone who has tuned in from their homes. Today, we are here with Ms. Mriganka Chaudhary, a political science teacher from BIRLA Vidya Niketan, to discuss the farm bills passed by the Parliament on 27 September 2020 that have taken the country by storm. Before we begin the session, I request all the viewers to put in their questions in the comment section of YouTube, which will be taken up at the end. So without further ado, I request Mriganka ma'am to begin with her presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, Principal Ma'am, my dear teachers and students. Also, all those who have joined us live on YouTube. I take this opportunity to thank Principal Ma'am for giving me a platform to put across my views on what the Farm Bill is all about and to let my little children of class 6, 7 and 8 understand what the agitation is all about. I have a small presentation here, and I would request all of you to listen to me carefully and focus on the presentation later. I'm going to tell you a story of Indian agriculture, and I'm going to tell you a story of the harvest of hope. My story begins with this is what you've been seeing for the past few days. It would be troubling you. How many of you read the newspaper? Or how many of you are discussing current events, national events with your parents? If you're doing it now, very good. But if you haven't started, begin from today. Talk to your parents, listen to the news together, and see what is happening around our country and across the world. And believe you me, it'll make you thinking young students. And once you have an opinion, you can put forth that opinion and work towards solutions. What you're seeing on the screen right now are protests. The farmers are protesting. Why are they protesting? And why are they protesting for agriculture? What are these laws? Let's go into detail and find out what they're all about. First, I'm going to talk about the dimensions of Indian agriculture. What is Indian agriculture? India is primarily an agrarian economy. India is primarily based on agriculture. A large number of crops are sown in India. Major crop areas across. We grow rice, we grow wheat, jawar, bajra, and all of India is largely agrarian. And what does agriculture do? Agriculture uses land. It's the largest industry. It's the sole provider of human food. It generates employment. Though we use traditional methods, we're moving towards modern mechanizations also. We've moved from old methods to organic farming, from conventional to sustainable to organic. Indian agriculture has grown. But what was the story of Indian agriculture? India was called the Golden Bird. It was rich, it was prosperous before the British came in. In fact, till 1700, we contributed almost 22.6% to the world income. Rich spices, fine cotton, all this were a glory of Indian agriculture. But the British, through its policies, ruined Indian agriculture. The zamindari system, the mehalwadi system, the rayatwadi system, all what you've studied in your history books of class 7 and 8, and forced indigo cultivation, distressed Indian agriculture. And by 1952, India's share in the world economy dipped to only 3.8%. Come to 1947, independence happens. Along with independence, partition happens. And India is again trying to gather up its roots, trying to start all over again. And the government announces a number of land reforms to heal Indian agriculture. We decided on planning as a method to grow and develop. And the first 5-year plan under K.N. Raj spoke about the revival of agriculture. A number of land reforms came in. A number of projects came in to boost agriculture. The second 5-year plan also spoke about industrialization and also a little bit of mechanization about agriculture. But by 1960-64, Indian agriculture was little troubled. Lots of problems in Indian agriculture. Our holdings were small. In 70-71, the average size of the land holding was 2.28 hectares. And today, it is only 1.08 hectares. We lacked good quality seeds. We lacked manures, inadequate storage facilities, inadequate transport facilities. Marketing methodologies were not sound. And only 1/3 of our cropped area was under irrigation. And by 1964-65, there was an acute shortage of food grains. What did the government of India do? The government of India decided and embarked on a program called the Green Revolution. Who was the father of the Green Revolution? A genetist, M.S. Swaminathan. He was the father of the Green Revolution. He launched it in the year 1967 and it lasted till 1978. What was the aim? Aim was to make India self-sufficient in terms of food crops, food security, nutritious food. And what was identified? It was decided that the rich states, the states which had fertile soils, the states which had adequate rainfall, the states where the land holdings were large, the farmers were rich, there we will give impetus and incentives to farmers. We will give them electricity, we will give them technology, we will give them good quality, high yielding variety seeds, we will give them credit, we will give them diesel facilities and finance. And this led to something called the Green Revolution. The states identified were Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. And as a result of this Green Revolution, India became self-sufficient in food. And thereafter began a journey of Indian agriculture going from strength to strength. It had the role of Indian agriculture in the Indian economy was huge. It has a great share in the national income. It is the largest employment providing sector. It contributes to capital formation. It provides raw materials to Indian industries. It is a market for industrial product. Also, Indian agriculture plays an important role in international trade, employment, provision of food grains, and it is an earner of foreign exchange. Indian agriculture, over 70% of rural households depend on agriculture. It contributes almost 17% to the total GDP. 60% of the population gets employment. And Indian agriculture has registered an impressive growth over the last few decades. Food grain production has increased 51 million tons in 1950-51 to 250 million tons during 2011-12. And as per the second advanced estimates for 2019 and 20, the total food grain production in the country is estimated at a record 291.95 million tons. Even the pulses production during 1920 is estimated at 23.02 million tons, which is higher by 2.76 million tons than the 5 years average production of 20.26 million. This goes to show how strong our Indian agriculture is. Along with this, agriculture and allied sectors like animal husbandry, forestry, fisheries, all account for 15.4% of the GDP. India also ranks second in the world in agricultural production. Globally, India ranks 8th for the agricultural exports. And agriculture was the only sector to grow from April to June 2020 among 8 used to compute India's GDP. Then, being the second global leader in agricultural production after China, Indian agriculture is strong. Now, despite all these facts and despite all these figures, why are the farmers agitating? Farmers are agitating for one reason. Let us now understand what is the context in which these 3 laws were announced. In 2017, the central government had released a Model Farming Act. It was a standing committee on agriculture. And it was found in that standing committee that while a large number of reforms had been suggested, not many had been implemented by the states. Markets were not functioning very well. And they were not serving this purpose. So the government decided, as a part of its 20 lakh crore financial stimulus package, to provide some kind of a relief to the economy. And it is with this intention that the government has come up with these 3 laws. Now let's go into detail as to what these laws are all about. There are 3 laws, and which is being put under the category of the Farm Bills of 2020 or the Farm Laws. It is a bill till it gets presidential assent, and after it gets the approval of the president, it becomes a law. So the first law is the Farmers' Produce Trade and Commerce, or the Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020. Now, what does this law try to tell us? This law says it wants to increase the trading area for the farmers. It allows for electronic trading and e-commerce of farmers' produce. This act tries to say is that today the farmer can sell his produce away from the agricultural produce mandi. The farmer can sell his product to whoever he wants. He need not go to the APMC to sell his product. He can sell his product to the highest bidder. So hence it expands the scope of trade areas of the farmers. He can sell any place of production, collection, or aggregation. Also, it prohibits the state government from levying any kind of fee or a tax on farmers, traders, and electronic trading platform for trade of farmers and produce outside the trade area. So it is giving a farmer a greater leverage to be able to sell his produce. The second act is the Farmers' Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act. What is this act all about? This gives a legal framework for farmers to enter into a pre-arranged contract with the buyers. Basically, what is this trying to talk about? All it is trying to say is that the farmer can enter into an agreement or a contract with large private houses in order to sell their produce. So, for example, if a farmer grows peas and the frozen peas are the demand especially during summer, so any of these large houses, any of these large corporates can enter into a contract or agreement with the farmer before the sowing season that this is what my price is and this is what my requirement is, and at the end of this, you will have to sell your product to me at this list price. So basically, the farmer and the private enterprise gets into a contract in order to purchase the produce made by the farmer. The third act is the Essential Commodities Amendment Act of 2020. Now, what does this act say? This says it removes foodstuffs such as cereals, pulses, potatoes, onions, edible oil seeds, and oil from the list of essential commodities. Till now, they were all seen as essential commodities. It also removes the stockholding limits on such items. You cannot hold on to them. You cannot stock onto them except under very, very extraordinary circumstances. That could be a drought, or that could be a war, or it could be a calamity. And it also requires an imposition of any stock limit on agricultural produce be based on price rise. If prices rise, then there would be a restriction to it. These are the 3 laws. Now, what is it in these 3 laws that the farmers are not happy? In the first law, it says this permits for the first time trade in agricultural produce outside the APMC regulated mandi. Now, what is the APMC? APMC is the Agricultural Produce Markets Committee. This is where the farmer brings all his produce and this is where he sells. This APMC has a tax structure, and this APMC is around every district and is accessible to the farmers in all villages. Now, this is where the farmer comes and sells his produce. But according to this new law, it says now APMC is a government enterprise. According to this new law, private mandis can be set up across the country where anyone can buy produce from farmers. Licenses that buyers are required to possess in APMC are no longer necessary. So you don't require a permit or a license to come and purchase from a farmer. Now, these new private mandis are also exempt from paying any taxes or fees. There are no tax levied here. The government says that this is a very good step for the farmers because it provides the farmers with greater choice. They can decide whom they want to sell to. They want to sell closer to the village or they want to go beyond and sell. But our farmers do not like this change. Farmers have put across a viewpoint. They say that instead of providing them choice and a better price, it will leave them at the mercy of a few private players who will organize groups. Farmers say initially it may be very good, but later there would be only a few people buying our crops. And what if the quality of crops for some reason may decline? How are we going to sell? How are we going to match the price? What if we do not get an adequate price for our crops? Now, this will happen because the APMC mandi will also continue to attract taxes. Now, APMC puts taxes for you. Now, to avoid the taxes, they will go to the private mandis. And if they go to the private mandis and the farmer's crop is not up to the mark, then how will the farmer be able to sell? And as a result, farmers feel scared that slowly, if we bypass the APMC, then the entire APMC structure will get dismantled. Also, the farmers fear that they will have very little bargaining power to sell outside the mandi in an unregulated trade. Now the trade is regulated. Now there are laws, there are structures, there are price brackets. But after that, only those more powerful buyers will be able to dictate a price. So the farmers are a little apprehensive that they may lose out in the long run. That is one fear of the farmers. Now, what does the second law say? The second law talks about empowerment and protection. Now, the second law, according to the government, said that an agreement can be made between the farmer and the buyer before sowing, under which the farmer is contracted to sell his or her produce. Now, this has been going on in India for quite some time. You all have Lay's chips. You know of a company called PepsiCo. So PepsiCo has in turn contracted farmers to sell potatoes, and farmers are doing that. They've been entering into contracts and keeping up with the contracts. But if it comes in as a law, the farmers feel it will not be very beneficial. Why? Because sometimes the crop may not be the required level. There would be indebtedness. They may have to borrow higher to ensure that the quality of the crop is good. Because as we had said, irrigation is not accessible to all. Most farmers are still dependent upon rain. So they feel it will cause indebtedness, it will cause loss of autonomy over their land, and it may even impact their livelihood. It may even impact their daily life. And the firm, because it is a private organization, a more moneyed organization, will have more power. Also, it says that the farmers feels that due to his lack of education, due to his lack of awareness, he may be hoodwinked into any of these agreements. And in case there are delayed payments or his produce is rejected on the basis of quality, what will he do? Where can he go for redressal? So this is another fear of farmers. The third law is the food hoarding law. Now, for one, this law removes all cereals, pulses, oil seeds from the list of essential commodities. And it says the government can impose a stock holding only under exceptional circumstances. What can they be? You can hoard or you can stock only in cases of war, famine, extraordinary price rise, or a natural calamity. Now, this law, the farmers feel, is another law which benefits big business, because it removes periodical stocking limits. But this law is also to a large extent in practice now, not for most grains, but for a large number. So these are the three laws, and these are the fears of the farmers. While the law 2, which talks of contract farming, and law 3, which talks of hoarding, is in some form implemented right now, what farmers actually fear is the first law of doing away with the mandis. Another aspect which is not related to this law is the question of a minimum support price. This is the core of this issue. And now, what is a minimum support price? Now, this is a price which is declared by the government every year before the sowing season. And the government says that these are the crops the government will procure or the government will buy from the farmers. Now, this amount is a consolidated amount which includes incentive to the farmer to increase his production. Now, at the point, the government has an MSP for 22 to 25 crops. 22, which is recommended by the government. 3 additional crops are there whose price the government determines. Now, why do the farmers fear? What do the farmers fear? The farmers fear that with these 3 laws, the government in some way by default is going to move away from the pattern of procuring grains at the MSP. They fear that slowly they will the government has not said we will withdraw MSP, but the farmers fear that it will soon start withdrawing MSP because the mandis will not exist. The APMC will get dismantled. So they want the government to say that we must pass a new legislation which makes MSP a legal right. Now, if we talk in economic terms, the minimum support price is not something, it is a floor price. It comes into play when conditions are bad, when the prices are not happy for the farmers. But you cannot make it a permanent kind of a right. But farmers say that no, we want it to be legalized. Another demand, they say, that the formula for calculating MSP should be changed. It should be the cost which is incurred by the farmer plus a 50% incentive. This was what was recommended by the Swaminathan Commission for Farmers in 2007. And the government readily implements and releases the MSP for the Rabi and the Kharif crops as well in time. Now, what are the crops which come under the minimum support price? It declares the support price for 22 crops. And who declares it? By the Department of Agriculture and Cooperation. The government of India, on the recommendation, does all of this. Now, what are these mandated crops? These are 6 Rabi crops and 14 crops of the Kharif season and 2 other commercial crops. The cereals include wheat, paddy, bajra, barley, jawar, ragi, and maize. Pulses are arhar, gram, urad, moong, lentils. Oilseeds are rapeseed, mustard, groundnut, soya bean, thoria, sesame, safflower, sunflower, and niger. And raw cotton, raw jute, dehusked coconut, sugarcane, and tobacco also fall into this category. Now, this is what the farmers are agitating for. And as of 16th of December, the farmers have put forward the following demands. First, they say, repeal the 3 farm laws, do away with the farm laws. Then they say, you convene a special session of parliament to cancel these laws. Third point they put forward is that make minimum support price and state procurement or state buying of crops a legal right. Also, the farmers wanted assurance that all conventional procurement system will remain. Also, they want a change in the MSP, which is 50% more than the weighted average cost of production. They want a cut of diesel prices for agricultural use by 50%. They also want a removal of punishment and fine for stubble burning. They want a release of all the farmers who've been arrested for burning paddy stubble in Punjab. And a withdrawal of all cases against and release of the farmer leaders. Another reason they say the center should not interfere in state subjects and there should be decentralization because agriculture is a state subject. But the government says, yes, agriculture is a state subject, but the government brings out a broad parameter, a broad paradigm. And the state governments have the freedom under our system of cooperative federalism to be able to work upon them. So it has to be a cooperative effort between the government and the farmers if the farmers do have a problem, we should sit, talk, follow the paradigm of democratic politics and iron out our differences. There is nothing where solutions cannot be found. We need to work towards our solutions. And finally, change is happening in rural India, but we still have a long way to go. Indian agriculture has become strong, and the government does want it to become stronger. Therefore, laws are implemented. Therefore, reforms are needed. Therefore, we need to initiate some kind of change. Change, agreed, is something which we're all resistant to and resist it, but we need to move step by step in order to create a glorious future. Indian agriculture has benefited from improved farming techniques, but the growth has not been equitable. We need to work more. We need to work intelligently. We need to work harder to be able to create conditions whereby our agriculture can move from step to step. Land use is changing in rural India as farmers today are getting good value for their holdings. We must work towards it. We must make agriculture more affordable and more productive. And finally, the effort should be to stop migration to urban areas. Give farmers enough benefits, create conditions whereby they can grow and they can produce along. Today, after almost 70 years, we've come a long way. We've come a long way from the black and white pictures which you see on your screen to apps which are meant for farmers, credit cards which are made for farmers, organic farming. From a grain deficient nation, we've turned to food security for all. There's a time for an evergreen revolution. Let's all work together. Let's all put our heads together and create policies whereby we can bring about a glorious tinge to Indian agriculture and again make India stand not at the second but at the first position in agricultural growth.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that informative session. So we now have a few questions from both our students and our viewers. The first question is that Bihar had done away with the APMCs in 2006, but that did not result in the rise in farmers' incomes. So what do you think will be different this time now that the government has released these reforms?
The farmers of Bihar were without APMCs. As a result, they were unable to sell their produce. And most of them deserted their lands. And they went to work in the states of Punjab and Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh as farm laborers. We need to create conditions whereby the farmer is proud of his produce and he's confident that he can sell his produce at a reasonable rate. I hope that answers your question, Arushi.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So now, Adnan, do you have any questions that you would like to ask, ma'am?
Yes, coming to the aspect of protest, when we see our constitution today, ma'am, we see it becoming predominantly the language of protest, and as guaranteed under Article 19, it assures the right to assemble peacefully. So when farmers are in distress and are getting slandered, when even the media is trying to paint one side of the protest as an extremist movement, as political science students, how should we understand the meaning of protest in 21st century India?
Adnan, protest is a part of democracy. Democracy means participation of all levels, participation of the people in the decision-making process. As a result, as students of political science, your first task becomes to read, to learn, to understand the Constitution, and read it minutely, read between the lines, and know what the Constitution has told us. And within that, taking a lesson from that, try to explain it to the world around you, what exactly is protest. We must find out what are the limits of protest. Protest should not hamper functioning of the government. Protest should be a form or a check on the government. So as students of political science, we must understand where to draw the line of protest or get carried away by media. So as students, you need to be aware that a protest should be to get the government's attention. but not disrupt normal function. Protest is a form of democratic politics, and everybody encourages it. But when that same protest becomes negative or counterproductive, then we need to change our strategies. So as students of political science, you need to realize and understand that yes, protest is essential, but keep protest in the paradigm it is meant to. Keep protest in the limits it is meant to be, so that the government listens, you also put your point of view across, and we can reach to a solution. What is the idea of a protest? The idea of the protest is to make government take cognizance of the step and to come up with solutions. A protest does not mean standing at two ends and each is very firm on its position and we wait for a situation who blinks first. Idea is to create solutions. So rather than problem creators, become solution finders and try to find solutions. And you, the new youth of today, the youth of tomorrow, the leaders of tomorrow, need to find out these solutions. I hope that answers your question, Adnan.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Adnan. I'm sure we've got a lot of questions from our viewers who are watching on YouTube. So, Vedangi, I request you to kindly go through them and address the questions to ma'am.
Yes, we do have a whole lot of questions from them as well. So the first one is, in West Bengal, most farmers don't even sell their produce at the MSPs. So why are the farmers protesting?
Vedangi, it is not a question of one state over the other state. It has to be taken collectively. When we take decisions for the country, we take it for the country as a whole. It is like saying that if I do not wear denims, why should I even go to a shop of Levi's? Or why should the tax or the tariffs be increased on fabric? It is not for one state or for one set of farmers. It is a system. We are working in a system. We need to think collectively. We need to think for Indian agriculture as a whole unit. That is the beauty of our diversity. We are so diverse, yet there's a common thread which ties us all. And it is this thread which we need to reinforce. So it is not the farmer of Bengal or the farmer of Assam, but it is the farmer of India which needs to be taken into account. And policies do we need to work?
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question. Why are the farmers not happy when they have no compulsion for selling their produce to the private companies? They can sell it to the mandis too.
Yes, but if they are contracted with the big corporate houses, and for some reason they're unable to produce that perfect quality required of them, then what happens to the farmer's produce? They're only looking for safety nets. And the government is also right that we're giving them options. But the government feels that, and even the farmers need to go step by step by step. We need to take care of decisions. We need to take care of our policies. We need to take care of change as it comes in. We need to go step by step to be able to achieve the required reform and change required. That is what is important. Agreed, farmers may have the liberty to sell, but this is of the big farmer. India is comprised of a large number of small farmers. What about those small farmers? The small farmers also need to be taken into account and their problems also need to be addressed.
Thank you, ma'am. One more question is there. If the private bodies are allowed to purchase directly from the farmers, this would inevitably lead to a decline in the government procurement of crops. In such a situation, the farmer is forced to sell at prices offered by the corporates, even if they are too low. How does this benefit the farmer?
This will not benefit the farmer. This is what the farmer is saying, that I will not, irrespective, I would be getting a lower price for my produce. I have invested everything I have, and then I get a price which is lower than it. It does not benefit the farmer. Therefore, the farmer is looking for a safety net. The farmer is looking for a minimum guarantee. And the government is saying that, yes, all right, we'll provide you a minimum guarantee. Let's move ahead step by step.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one last question. The government claims that the laws are for the welfare of the farmers. In that case, why did the Haryana State Police resort to options like tear gas and water cannons against the farmers who they say misinterpreted the laws?
Now, these are the institutions of democracy. Any protest is always seen by governments as a disruption of normal functioning. Farmers coming in large numbers, the state governments, in order to maintain that law and order, do sometimes take in harsh steps, which again may prove a failing of the state government. The state government will not be looked at very happily when they come out with such strategies. The farmers are protesting peacefully. The state governments should have and could have had some restraint in their actions. But after that, these are how individual states react to protests. But even today, the Supreme Court's decision says that protest is a democratic right. The farmers have the right to protest, and the state and the government should take into cognizance the demands or the fears which are expressed by the farmers, and the government should work on allaying these fears to take the farmers into confidence and talk and provide solutions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was really helpful for all of us. Over to you, Adnan.
Ma'am, how should one introspect the first coming to the point when the ruling party said that the bill is pro-farmer and against corporation, when it guarantees that the agreement supposed to work between the two parties and did not include the private sector, how they would benefit from it? And on the other hand, when the Adani Group were building up sort of their regional fronts in the villages, with coming up with factories and all for past 1 year, how did the consultation process of these laws went with the farmers?
See, Adnan, here we are talking of a consultation, we are talking of a dialogue with all stakeholders. Every government works with the agenda of creating sustainable solutions. Every government talks about finding the best possible methods to increase not only production, not only manufacturing, but also generally increase and stepping up all the various parameters of the economy. Certain governments focus on certain aspects, other governments focus on other aspects. What is the underlying point here is that now, with the coming in of globalization, with India opening up its economy in 1991, the attempt to integrate with the world economy is also there. We have adopted mechanization. We have adopted ways and means whereby we can bring about a change in our farming patterns, in our conventional technology. We've adopted even organic farming. But what needs to be done now is to be able to integrate it holistically so that all stakeholders can move together. The moment you rush it, it may just seem to upset the apple cart. But the idea is that the government and the farmers need to sit, talk, and find solutions to the problem rather than each of them working on their own agenda. The government has certain good points, the farmers have certain good points. Let's come together on the negotiating table. Let's talk about it. Let's move ahead and create a situation whereby the only one beneficiary out of it would be the Indian farmer and the Indian economy as a byproduct.
Ma'am, we have a few more questions on YouTube, so I request Vedangi to please address them.
Yes, ma'am, there's one more question. How is the stubble burning thing justified by the farmers?
Farmers feel that it is a natural process of refertilizing, but it has a great impact on the environment. And a clear example of it this time is that despite the fact that there were fewer number of vehicles on the roads of Delhi post-lockdown and in the process of lockdown, it does show there's a direct correlation between stubble burning and low air quality index. So the farmers need to be educated. New methods have to be brought about whereby stubbles can be looked after and a solution found in order to help both the farmer as well as prevent it from having a negative impact on the pollution levels. There have been a few researches, there have been a few techniques undertaken in South India where instead of burning stubble, they have recycled it. But these prove and are a little expensive and they need you getting used to. So what the government needs to do is to educate farmers, to give them some kind of workshops, give them various options, how the stubble can be used, can be recycled, both for benefit for the farms also, and also reduce pollution.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question. Should the local farm unions not decide on the minimum selling price unanimously for their produce? This will ensure that corporate entities do not twist the farmers.
Now, the Indian farm sector is not a unified entity. We have various small organizations, we have various parties trying to be a part of it. Unity is something which is been a handicap for India. Right from the days of Mir Jafar, Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, where the lack of unity in India made India an easy prey to the British. Likewise here also, unity in terms of unions coming in together, putting across their viewpoint is a little fragmented. We haven't been able to articulate our views effectively. As a result, and like the earlier question said, farmers of West Bengal do not sell at MSPs. So within various states, we are at loggerheads and sometimes even counterproductive to what is happening. So first we need to come together and state what our objectives are and then negotiate with the government. Our farmer unions are also to a very large extent fragmented. Hence, we've not been there. Hence, the protest seems to be long and drawn because one does, different groups are demanding various things.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, Arshi.
Thank you so much, Vedangi, for addressing the questions to ma'am. And thank you so much, ma'am, for answering the questions so well. I have another question. So I was curious that over the past few months, social media has been flooded with criticism for the bills and support for the farmers and their protests. This has been coined by some as merely armchair activism, which we have seen a few times before in a lot of movements that have taken place. So, do you feel that the digital movement is helpful or can bring about change in these situations?
Arushi, digital movements are very helpful, but with the right tone, with the right information, and the right exposure. You need to be able to decipher what is correct and what is incorrect. You need to be able to understand what is right and what is wrong. For that, you need to be aware of what is happening around you. You need to read up. You need to find out. You cannot be mere armchair philosophers that if a protest is happening, join. Or if a protest is happening, somebody is being discriminated upon. So as students, you need to be aware. You need to be well read. You need to be responsible. And the biggest thing is you need to be aware of the fact that this is our country. Protest, demonstrations, yes, are a part of democracy, but they should be responsible. They should be for solution finding. They should not be for disruption. So while social media can play a huge role, but it needs to be well informed. And it is students like you who need to carry on this debate. You need to be aware of what is happening and weigh things in the right measure to be able to put form. It is you who need to articulate views. You need to generate and channelize energies. And it is only an informed mind which is going to channelize. So rather than being caught in the sway of what the social media is, be the ones to lead the media. Read, write, analyze, think, and then come up with solutions so that you are able leaders. A vigilant citizen is the best form of a democracy. And that is what is going to prevent any kind of inequality, that is going to prevent any kind of discrimination. So you need to be aware, only then would you become vigilant citizens. And if a nation has vigilant citizens, nobody can stop the progress of that nation.
Yes, ma'am, I'm very rightly said. Ma'am, I was looking through YouTube and ma'am, the questions are not stopping. So I request Vedangi to kindly address the last few questions for ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. There's a question from Abhimanyu Sharma. What happens to commission agents in states if the entire farm trade moves out of mandis?
That is, commission agents, or the artis as they were called, are the ones who were friends of the farmers. They used to help the farmer. They used to provide him with loans. And sometimes even in case of delayed payments, they used to help the farmer. And in case the farmer was in distress or he needed more money, it is the arti who came to him, help him. But here we're not talking of dismantling of the APMC directly. But yes, if private mandis are open, the artis or the commission agents would find it a little difficult. Agreed, they are said to be the middlemen. Agreed, they to a large extent are the ones who tend to come between the farmer and the government. But even then, their role in the farmer's life seems to be important. And slowly, they would be bypassed, and the farmer would have nobody to fall back on. These commission agents, yes, a certain government say to do away with them so that the farmer can get his real price, but it is between the devil and the deep sea. Right? So it needs to be taken. If a system has to be dismantled, we must have alternative structures. And those alternative structures need to be so strong that it only melts from one to the other. It is not a replacement of one to the other.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question from Deepika Parekh, ma'am. We also read that most of the Western countries have invested in technology to ensure that the produce is cost effective and the farmers can have better margins. Should government not look at this as an initiative, such as giving long-term loans to farmers to invest in farm equipments?
Deepika ma'am, thank you for the question. The government should do this, but the government does provide loans. The farmer does take a loan. The farmer does invest in agriculture. But it could be that due to certain natural calamities or a crop deficit or some kind of unforeseen circumstances, the farmer is or loses his produce. As a result, the loan is there, but how will repayment take place? So the mechanism of providing loans, and what governments usually do, governments come in, loan waivers are there, and the cost is borne by the exchequer. So what needs to be done here is a very structured system whereby the government can introduce these kinds of things to help farmers mechanize. But again, at the root cause is the small holdings of Indian farmers. Indian farmers are relatively, the number of large holdings is small, and the small marginal farmers are large. Giving them a loan, yes, very good, but they should be in a position to be able to repay those loans. The conditions should be such that taking a loan is going to boost and benefit them rather than becoming a liability for them.
Thank you, ma'am. There's one more question. This is from Anil Bakshi. If the farmers are not happy with the bill, then why is the government forcing it on them?
Thank you, sir, for the question. The government is not forcing any bill. The government has put forward a bill. It is how we take it. And if we do have a problem, let us negotiate, let us talk, let us put across a viewpoint. Nothing can be forced down in a democracy. And we need to keep our channels of communication open. The state governments also need to pitch in. Agriculture is a state subject. Nothing is forced. But yes, we can work out solutions. Even the Supreme Court said, work out solutions. Let's create solutions. Nothing is being forced on the farmer. All we need to do is to allay the fears of the farmers. All we need to do is to increase confidence building measures so that the farmer, the small marginal farmer of India, is not fearful, is not scared, enjoys his agriculture and produces for the well-being. Lal Bahadur Shastri gave a slogan of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan in the middle of the 65 war. The soldier is as much to be propped up as the farmer. It is the farmer who grows and feeds that the soldier is equipped to handle the borders. Likewise, we need to ensure that our farming community is bolstered. the farming community gets confidence, and we need to speak, find solutions, and thereby move ahead. Let's not put everything, the government has put it down. No, let's find solutions. Everybody is resistant to change. You and me also, when a slight change, we were so averse to the pandemic because we were locked down. We've never seen something like it. So we were averse and we were anti this change. So let's initiate a process whereby change can be accepted, allay the fears, and then move towards a better future.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering that. There's one more question. I'll just read that as well. There have been objections on opposition for misleading the farmers, but have the government considered that farmers are protesting because the government is not taking their views?
See, no government can afford to be autocratic. No government can say that, no, this is right and this is wrong. At the end of it, at the end of 5 years, every government faces the hustings. And no government will commit suicide by doing something which is anti-people, anti-population. Let's find a middle path. A government going against the people is a direct signal that it would lose elections. Indian governments are based on elections. Every 5 years, a referendum is there. Referendum to the policies of the government. So no government is going to commit harakiri and bring in policies which are anti-people, and especially for an agrarian country like India, policies which are anti-farmers. There are issues, but yes, like all democracies, we need to work towards solutions. Why go into a conflict mode all the time? Let's find solutions and let it be part of government, opposition, and the stakeholders. Why are we always in confrontation mode? Let's try to bring about a change. We are 21st century. We are moving forward. We are moving ahead. Let's talk of consensus building rather than conflict within societies.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very rightly said. There's one more question from Arman Mathur. Can the government not put a hold on the bills while they take time to convince the farmers of their merits? Is it now a question of pride?
I don't think governments act on egos. And as Arman would see what we studied in political science class 12, governments which are seen to be undemocratic or governments which are seen to be quarrelsome, those governments face the consequences, right? So it depends upon the government, and also governments would think about it with the coming of the ruling from the Supreme Court that the governments need to take into cognizance all what is happening around. I don't think it is a question of ego for the government. Government, politics, democratic politics, participation of the people, for the people, by the people. Participation of the people. The end result is the people. So governments which are seen to be autocratic, the people have given them a justifiable answer at the end of 5 years. So I don't think any government is going to risk it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That is the end of it. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you, Vedangi. Ma'am, before we end the session, I have one last question for you. So, ma'am, farmers sell their products at a low cost, but it is sold to consumers at a much higher price. So do you think due to these reforms, the farmers will get more income?
The end result is to give a farmer a little more in his pocket. The aim is to make agriculture sustainable in India. The aim is to make agriculture enterprising venture. The aim is to make agriculture a paying resource. How we achieve is what independent governments and various governments through their policies aim. Indian agriculture, right from 1947-50, today has come to a place where it stands second. We need to come up with policies. We need to come up with ways whereby Indian agriculture needs to move forward. Insofar as how to make agriculture more productive, how to make agriculture more paying and beneficial to farmers is what economists and social scientists need to look into in terms of technical know-how. in terms of how to go about structuring economies, how to go about structuring demand and supplies, how to go around managing industry versus government interference, how to go about managing globalization versus individual growth, how to go about talking about a holistic agricultural program vis-a-vis individual state and individual farmers. So we need to look at it holistically and more comprehensively to be able to make agricultural paying for the farmer. It should be the most, the farmer should take pride and should not be distressed. We must reach a position where no farmer in India is forced to commit suicide. Let it be paying for all farmers across, not just the large landholders, but even the small marginal farmer who does a little bit of farming on that small patch of land. The aim and the idea needs to be this.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, the questions are not ending. So we have just one final question for you. This is from Vandana, ma'am. Ma'am, she asked that rural finance agencies are not very efficient in India. So what can be done to improve credit availability in your opinion?
Ma'am, thank you, Vandana, ma'am, for this question. A very technical question, needs to rework on economics and economic structures. And no person better than an economist like you would be able to answer this very well. Me, with my limited knowledge of economics, would feel that a restructuring of institutions is not what is required right now. We need to make our institutions more effective in terms of functioning. It is very easy to change, but we need to make sure that institutions work effectively. We need not compromise on the effectiveness of our institutions. And as terms of credit policy goes, bank cards goes, the green cards goes, the farmer cards goes, a system has to be evolved whereby we can create a foolproof system of agricultural credit. It is no longer the case of the farmer being unable to repay his loan and his cow or his bullock is brought to the bank and said, all right, now it is a property of the bank. We need to work on better modes. We need to work upon better structures and make our political structures, our economic institutions more effective rather than dismantling and creating new structures.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a wonderful presentation and for answering all the questions so well. We have received so many positive reviews on YouTube from all our viewers. I thank everyone who took out time and attended today's session. We really hope you gained some valuable insight today. Good evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arushi. Thank you, Adnan. Thank you, Vedangi. Thank you so much, Principal Ma'am, Gayatri Ma'am, and Mona Ma'am, for helping me put out my views. Thank you so much for this opportunity.